Hey everyone, welcome to my channel, Books, Scares, and Purrs. My name's Leslie, and this is our spoiler corner. Today we're going to discuss South Central Noir edited by Gary Phillips. There are 14 authors included. I listened to an interview with Gary Phillips, and he did mention that he very much curated who he was going to include in this selection because he wanted to reflect an environment, a book that's just as diverse as South Central itself. I really appreciated that. I'm kind of like just adjacent or within those areas. There's a really cool looking map in here. That basically just outlines where each story is taking place. And in this selection, there's 3 parts, and each part has a name. The first part is Always and Forever, the second is Cold Sweats, and the third is The World is Ghetto. I read Always and Forever and immediately thought of the song by Luther Vandross. It turns out it wasn't originally sung by him. It was sung by another band, Heatwave, and I've never heard their version, so I definitely want to check it out. But since I read this collection, I looked up each song, and I'm hoping I'm looking at the right song, just to see how the songs are a nod to that particular section of the book. The second one is Cold Sweats, and that's a song by James Brown. I am familiar with that one, but again, I don't know if it's the one that the editor was thinking of, but that's the one I looked up. And the third part is The World is a Ghetto by War. But I also was thinking about that song by Aaliyah Sheffield that came out not too long ago. I think it's called The Earth is Ghetto. Both of the sentiments in each song apply to the sentiment of what maybe the editor was trying to get across. And so I just appreciated that little, I don't know, it almost feels like it's an Easter egg of sorts. Alright, so what I'll do is I'll talk about one story from each selection. But before I say that, I will say that there's only 14 authors in here in this anthology. I'm used to seeing more authors, and I'm wondering if that's a contributing factor to the fact that in each section there'll be one story that's so much lengthier than the rest. And an anthology isn't really crafted with the idea of how long a story should be, but I think I'm used to reading shorter stories in anthology, and I felt that may have hurt the collection a little bit. I think I would have appreciated if there was a couple more authors included, but yeah, I'm not sure what the choice was around that. So you know what, let's look at the song Always and Forever, not by Luther Vandross. But you know what, I will include below, I'll include in the details a link to the song. That's what I'll do. Alright, I'm going to read you the first section of lines, and it says, Always and forever, each moment with you is just like a dream to me that somehow came true, and I know tomorrow will still be the same because we got a life of love that won't ever change. Every day love me your own special way, melt all my heart away with a smile. Take time to tell me you really care, and we'll share tomorrow together. Always forever love you, and I'll always love you forever. Always forever love you. And so that's the first song. So in that first section, I wanted to go ahead and talk about All That Glitter by Gary Anthony Haywood. And for each story on the right section, it'll say what the location of the story is. And this one is Watts Towers. A little bit before the pandemic happened, I happened to go to, I think I've been to Watts Towers maybe twice in my entire life, even though it's close by. And I think I only went as like a, I think maybe a touristy thing. I tend to only go when like family's in town, and it's just one of those spots that I like to take them because it's such a unique piece of history and landmark, I guess. And there's also an arts center, and I don't know now. I'm talking about this in the past tense, but I remember there was a lovely lady that also would teach people, I don't know if they were a certain age, how to play piano, and she would take donations. So that was nice to know. But I'm saying this and I realized that was years ago. It's 2024 and I haven't been back since, so maybe it's time. Right, so I'll definitely include a picture of the Watts Tower so you kind of get the reference I'm making here. So the first story is called All That Glitters, and there's a new security guard, and he's talking to someone else that's training him, and Eric is just trying to understand like why is a security guard even needed, and so this person that's training Eric goes on to tell him a story. And so the story is about a young man and his brother, and they frequent the Watts Towers because the younger brother, it doesn't say what is going on with them, but they may have some sort of learning disabilities or neurodivergence. So the older brother really loves the younger brother, takes care of them, and their mother passes away. The mother had a large inheritance, and so both brothers inherit money, and the older brother continues to take care of his younger brother. He really cares about him. But the story is basically about how greed really affected the older brother, and he just mismanaged his money. He zipped through it really quickly to the point where he was in a desperate situation and wanted access to his younger brother's financial funds, but he couldn't because I guess there were, whoever's managing their money, there's just steps in place, and they're making sure that that doesn't happen. And so the older brother finds out that their mother had some jewels, or like jewelry, I guess, jewelry, and the younger brother got to play with the jewelry, and unwittingly, every time they went to Watts Towers, the younger brother was taking apart the jewelry and gluing it all over the place. And if you've seen the Watts Towers, it's really beautiful, and you could see just through your imagination how that could happen, especially if he was just letting his little brother be himself. And so you're following this story that has a lot of loving moments, and then it just slowly takes a dark turn because eventually the older brother accidentally kills the younger brother out of just being upset, and it accidentally happens. So then he ends up in prison. So it's just like a story that takes place in a place that I'm fond of, but then it takes a dark turn because this is noir. Noir usually focuses on crime, and in fact I have such a rigid understanding of noir, and I've only seen movies that are involved with noir. I haven't really read any books, so this is the first one. And I even looked up the definition of noir, and it says, oh okay, let me look over here. It's a French word for darkness or of the night, and it's always used in modern crime fiction. So when I'm reading this, I think I'm just thinking of those hard-boiled crime fiction books, not necessarily how this book represents noir. So I did like that. I think it was a little bit jarring and kind of threw me off, but I enjoy that. I enjoy writers that are pushing the envelopes of like what I would expect as a reader, especially since I haven't read noir. So this makes sense. What I liked about that story and what I found going on throughout is these moments of levity, these moments of humor at times. And by the end, that story is the one that impacted me the most out of that section, because I just didn't expect it to take such a dark turn. And ultimately, it's like I almost forgot that I was reading a noir story. And so yeah. But even at the very end, there's this like funny banter, there's my cat, going on between the security guard that's hearing this information and the person that's training him. So that's it for that section. Then the second section is called, ooh, let me make sure I'm looking at the right one. Cold Sweats. And that's, I think that's the one that's a James Brown song, but it's kind of short, so I don't know if I'm looking at the right song, but it is another song that's more of like a lovey-dovey song. And some of the lyrics are, I don't care about your wants, I just wanna, it's James Brown, tell you about the do's and don'ts. I don't care about the way you treat me, darling. I just want to understand my honey. I took out all the ha's. I'm like, why am I saying the ha's? All right, so from this section, I'm going to read Haint in the Window, which takes place in Leimert Park Village. And this is written by Tananarive. I'm sorry if I'm saying her name wrong. I've heard it a couple of times and I was worried I was going to say her name wrong. So that's on page 132. All right, so this is a story that I really enjoyed because it takes place in a bookstore. And once again, the location is very much a part of the story. So it's in Leimert Park. And what the author captures is an area over time that's becoming gentrified. And so that's at the background, but it's very much a part of the story in a way. Daryl's the main character we're reading the story through. He owns a bookstore. He inherited it from his family. It definitely wasn't necessarily what he wanted to do. And so we kind of see this in a very short span, like his arc from not wanting to run the bookstore to getting inspiration of making the store his own. And so you get a glimpse into his everyday everyday interactions with customers, and also the security guards, dealing with microaggressions, racism, and how that's all encompassing and how do I say this? A growing problem as you go through the story, and eventually something mysterious happens. He notices that some of his books are misplaced, and he tries to deduce who is moving around the books. And so at some point he thinks someone's in his store that shouldn't be, and comes to the conclusion that maybe who is there is a ghost. And what the author does so well is build tension in a way that at times there's this I'm sorry, humorous moments. So there almost seems like the story at times could be more seen like as a horror, but then also these humorous moments happen that really like took me out. And I think that's what really great horror or comedy does, is it builds tension and then it like releases it. And I'm gonna go ahead and read from this section. Daryl didn't go to many horror movies because the characters could be so dumb, but he wondered why more people in movies didn't just tell the ghost to F off, because that would be a short movie, he decided. But that was his plan, and if establishing dominance wasn't enough, he'd bring in that new tarot reader from down the street to make the banishing more official. "Mess up my store like this?" he said as he went shelf by shelf, replacing the fallen books one at a time, setting the ones with bent covers aside, a growing pile. "You effed up all the way." He impressed himself with his tough talk, decided he wasn't scared, but then a soul food cookbook in trade paperback teetering on a shelf behind him fell to the floor, and he screamed like a high school girl, and then he laughed at himself. And then, yeah, maybe he cried a little too. Or a lot. And so I just thought that was so funny, but also felt like a very real interaction, if that makes any sense. And so I obviously like really loved that short story. This is my spoiler corner, so I will spoil this because I think I have to in order to give this short story the praise that it deserves. So this character thinks that there's a ghost, right? And so at some point the store is closed, books are in disarray, and the security guard probably hears what's going on and goes to check it out. While that's happening, this character, Daryl, is trying to figure out who this person is. He's under the impression that it might be his dad, and that leads him to try to figure out what kind of message this ghost is trying to tell him. And so he misperceives this as a message from his dad to take ownership of the store, make it personal. There's no need to just cater to anyone. So it's more talking about not following in line with, like, let's say the other big retailers, right? Like, let's say, I don't know, Barnes & Noble is the only one that comes to mind. But to create a curation that he's proud of, of authors that he wants to reflect. And so while he's kind of like, once again, having an epiphany, he has all these moments, right? And whenever that happens, the tone shifts. Just like there's a horror moment and then the tone shifted to comedy. Now, during this moment of feeling like he's just about to get somewhere, the tone shifts again. Because the security guard comes, sees the mess, sees him in there and that the store is closed, thinks that maybe he's like a robber or whatever he thinks. Either way, he's just a man. It's his store, and he shoots him. And right before that happens, Daryl sees the ghost-like figure and realizes this whole time it wasn't really like a ghost. It was his future self trying to warn him. And so he ends up dying, and then I think he says something like he's going to go back and haunt the security guard. And so I feel like it's almost like a time traveling thing. It's also speaks to someone that might have like psychic abilities in the story, that his ghost's future past, whatever you want to call that, self, was actually trying to warn him about what was going to happen to him. So really it was his own self trying to communicate with himself. And that was just like a twist I wasn't expecting. That was like M. Night Shyamalan level twist. And so I loved it. That was the one that I thought, should I spoil this? Why not? So I really, really love that one. I don't really know how much that aligns to the song. Maybe the line that says, "I just want to tell you about the do's and don'ts." Maybe that's why this is a little bit of a nod to that song. But yeah, I absolutely love that. Just the constant like tonal shift and twist within the narrative was really cool in such a short period of time. And so I'm actually really glad that story stood out to me, because in the month of February, I am going to be listening to or reading The Reformatory by this author. And so I've never read anything by her before until I read this. So it was a complete coincidence, and I was planning on reading this book anyways because it's on my small shelf, which is like my TBR. And so I really appreciated that. All right, so the last section is, what is it called? Oh, The World is a Ghetto by War. That's the only one I could think of that the author may have referenced. I'll read it to you, okay? It says, walking down the street, smoggy-eyed, looking at the sky, starry-eyed, searching for a place, searching for a place, searching for a place, weary-eyed, crying in the night, crying in the night. Don't you know that it's true that for me and for you, the world is ghetto? Don't you know that it's true? I'm trying to skip over the chorus part. Wonder when I'll find paradise. Somewhere there's a home, sweet and nice. Wonder if I'll find happiness. Never give it up. Now, I guess. But yeah, I'll stop there. Everything else is basically like the chorus, I suppose. Yeah, it's mostly just the chorus. All right, and I felt like that was fitting to the entire collection for the third part, but I was trying to figure out which one I should choose. So I'll talk about Sabar, which takes place in Slauson Park, and it's by Roberto Lovato. And before I even go there, I'll just say, like, in the back, they have like a what do you call it? About the contributors section. So if you read any of the stories and you're interested to know more about the authors, there's a section in the back. I'll probably make this brief just so that this section isn't too long. So there's a detective by the name of Detective Carrillo, and so that's like his crime beat. So he's working on a case, and the entire story is him meditating on his past life, some of the politicking and corruption in El Salvador, what's going on in Los Angeles, and how those two places are very different, but there's definitely crossover, there's definitely similarities, and that's basically what the character does most of the time as he's trying to solve a crime. And this all leads him to stumble upon the fact that there's police corruption and that the police are in the bed with the gangs to serve a larger purpose, which is to try to galvanize against those that want the police organizations to be abolished. And so that's like the epiphany that he has in the end. But I really enjoyed what the author said throughout as a meditation. And so I think I'll read some of that. He goes on to talk about someone that was an organizer, an activist, and says that he was like a pain in the butt, but that he was an effective organizer. He knew how to conspire like they were taught. Ego or not, he died with a Jedi belief. Revolution. And then he goes on to say, LA itself feels like Salvador, a dark, ugly feeling. Rocky rejects as if it were a gun in his gut. So even the atmosphere reminds him of being in El Salvador and what was going on there. And so I just enjoyed that in terms of talking about issues that are still going on now. I think that's it as far as my notes. I would say that I appreciated this so much. It was really cool to see how each author tackled the locations as a character and what they wanted to focus on. There's definitely, I want to say, 2 stories in here that do mention the riots that happened in K-Town or Koreatown. But I'm glad it wasn't all about like one particular location. that moment was so historic and so meaningful, so I could see why it would be included. But I am glad it wasn't just all about that, you know. So I really loved it. I definitely think if you're not familiar with noir like me, this would be a great way to like step your toes into it. But yeah, I don't really have anything else to say but that I did enjoy this collection. It was worth picking up. And I got really lucky because I picked it up at Village Well and they had a signed copy, and it was just, I would have picked it up either way. But that was like a nice little perk. Let me know if I got some of the songs wrong. Especially the one that was by James Brown called Cold Sweats. That's what I could find. What that said, if you watch this entire thing, thank you so much. Next month, I'm going to be a little bit crazy busy. I packed on some more than just what's on my shelf. So I am going to have individual short reviews. But when it comes to the spoiler chat, I'm going to double up and talk about 2 books at once. Because that's the only way it's going to work for that month. So wish me luck if you're watching this. Thank you. Please subscribe, comment below, like, and boost me in that algorithm. Alright everyone, I love you. I'll talk to you later.